Kintsugi is a centuries-old Japanese art form, which translates to golden joinery. Now, this concept is really fascinating to me. So, when a piece of china or a pottery breaks, instead of throwing it away, the pieces are put together and cracks are repaired using this liqueur mixed with powdered gold. And the end result not only is a piece that's functional, but it's also really, really beautiful. I would even go as far as saying that it's more beautiful than its original form. But Kinzuki is more than a repair method. It's a philosophy that flaws are part of a history, not something to cover up, but something to highlight. Each crack, each flaw tells a story. And it's the story that it's telling that's making that piece more unique. It's making it more valuable than it was before. Now, ever since I learned about Kinzuki, I haven't been able to stop thinking about how we, as entrepreneurs, as experts or creators, treat our own perceived flaws, especially when it comes to how we present ourselves online. Isn't it strange? Like on social media, we work so hard to smooth over our imperfections. We try to curate a version of ourselves that looks polished, that looks perfect. We're so afraid to let people see anything that might feel raw or real, anything that might not fit into this idea of perfect. But what if we followed the same philosophy as Kenzuki on social media or online, as a matter of fact? Have you ever written a post that felt good, it felt real, felt honest, it felt authentic, and you couldn't wait to share it, only to hesitate when it was time to hit publish? You started second guessing yourself. You got worried about what people will think. Will this hurt my professional image? Am I sharing too much? And then maybe you deleted it altogether or saved it for later. I know I've done that plenty of times. I've edited out parts of my personality that I thought was too much for the professional world. I've questioned whether sharing a challenging experience would make my prospects doubt me or my abilities. I've held back offering my advice that went against the popular opinion because I was so afraid of being called out. And let me tell you, this pressure to show up polished and perfect is so exhausting. We work so hard to sand down our edges, to filter out anything that might feel too personal or too vulnerable or too risky. But it took me a long time to realize that when we hide those parts of ourselves that make us who we are, we're not really protecting our reputation. We're hiding our gold. I want to tell you a story about one of my clients. Her name is Barbara. She has this sharp, clever sense of humor. It's the kind of humor that makes her unforgettable. Now, one day, she shared a post on LinkedIn that was just pure Barbara. It was funny, smart, real. Now, she wasn't trying to be edgy or entertaining, and her post wasn't rude or offensive. She was just simply being herself. And not even a minute had passed after she hit publish that she got a DM saying, "Are you sure this post is appropriate? Maybe you should consider removing it before too many people see it." Now, this wasn't a troll or a stranger trying to tear her down. It was actually a well meaning colleague who thought Barbara's humor was just too risky, that it might cost her clients or even damage her credibility. Now, let's pause here for a moment. Imagine that's you. That is your words, your voice that's being questioned. What would you do? Would you hesitate? Edit? Delete? Why would I? That was Barbara's response. This is who I am. This is how I talk. If someone doesn't resonate with my humor here, they definitely won't resonate with me when we work together. Bold, right? Well, maybe. Again, Barbara wasn't trying to be bold. She was just being herself. Now, here's the ironic part. That same day, a prospect who had been following Barbara for a while booked a discovery call with her. At the end of that conversation, the prospect said, I saw your post this morning and I laughed so hard. I had tears running down my face and I thought, I hope she's as real as she seems because I already love her. That call turned into a six-figure deal. Now, Barbara's story is a perfect example of what happens when we stop hiding and we embrace who we really are. When we do that, we attract the people who truly resonate with us. But let's zoom out for a second because Barbara's experience isn't just about one post or one instance. It's actually part of a much bigger story. It's a story that we all have been living, whether we realize it or not. Think about this for a second. From the time that we're kids, we're taught to fit in, be quiet, don't stand out, smooth out your edges. The loud ones, the bold ones, the different ones, they labeled as weird or troublemakers. They end up in principals' offices or they're left out by their peers. And those lessons, they don't just disappear when we grow up, they follow us into adulthood. And those fears, they actually become more amplified on social media where every post feels so public and permanent. So what do? Well, we polish, we curate, we edit, we sand down the parts of ourselves that might feel too real or too raw or too imperfect until we smooth away the very edges that makes us who we are, until there is nothing left but a generic version of ourselves. But when we hide behind a mask of perfection, we're not avoiding risk. We're actually amplifying it. Because the more you try to be like everyone else, the less anyone feels you. And yes, when you are too polished, people may not criticize you, but they won't care either. They won't laugh, they won't cry, they won't react. And without a reaction, you can't build connection. And without connection, you're just another voice in the noise. Think about the last time that you were deeply moved by something that you saw online. Was it the overly polished post that felt like it came from a brand manual? Or was it something genuine where you could feel the person behind the words? I bet that it was the latter. Look, perfection isn't relatable, it's not human. When something feels too perfect, we instinctively see it as fake and subconsciously disconnect from it. There's even a name for this in psychology. It's called the pratfall effect. In 1966, social psychologist Elliot Aronson conducted an experiment where participants listened to recordings of individuals answering quiz questions. In one scenario, a highly competent individual spilled coffee at the end of the interview. This minor mistake led participants to rate that person as more likable compared to everyone else. That's what we're drawn to what's real, the imperfections and the quirks that makes us human. Those little flaws, those authentic moments are what create connection. They're what makes us relatable. But when we try to project an image of perfection, we lose all of that. We lose the human touch. We lose the vulnerability, the personality, the rawness that makes us memorable and magnetic. The reason so many people are drawn to Van Gogh's paintings isn't because they're flawless, it's actually quite the opposite. His brushstrokes weren't perfect, they were chaotic, messy, they were bold. But when you stand in front of one of his paintings, you feel something. Just like Kintsugi, Van Gogh's art reminds us that beauty isn't found in perfection. It's found in emotion, in vulnerability. It's found in humanity. And here's the unfortunate reality, which is this pressure to polish ourselves into something more acceptable is actually more intense for women. And it's no surprise either, because from an early age, a lot of girls are told not to be too much. Don't be too loud. Don't be too bold. Don't take up too much space. And the more unfortunate truth is that much of that judgment zeroes in on things that are impossible to control, which is how we look. My hair is too curly. My hair is too frizzy. I have acne on my face. The biggest concern I hear from women about doing more videos on social media is the fact that it takes so much time and effort to do their hair and makeup. Think about that for a moment. The number one concern for so many women isn't what they're going to say, it's how they look. Oh my gosh, that's so exhausting, isn't it? The energy that we spend trying to meet expectations that don't reflect who we are or what really matters. So there comes a moment when you have to ask yourself, is the fear of being judged worth the cost of not being fully seen? What if, starting tomorrow, you didn't care about what others thought of you? What if you didn't analyze or overanalyze every part of how you show up, how you look, what you say, or how you say it? What would be the real cost? Is the risk getting a few virtual eye rolls? Or perhaps a handful of virtual head shakes from strangers who don't get you? or even the possibility of being criticized by someone who was never going to be your client or customers to begin with? Look, I learned this the hard way. For the longest time, I was so terrified of being publicly criticized. I wanted every version of myself that I shared to be perfect, to have been edited and polished until there wasn't a crack left to be seen. But eventually, here's what I realized. The biggest risk wasn't being judged. It was losing the chance to connect with the people who truly needed my help, the people that I was meant to impact. Look, you can't make progress. You can't create momentum if you're constantly curating or you're constantly polishing every word, every thought, or every part of who you are. Because the truth is that the more authentic you are, the more you'll attract the right people, the people who resonate with your message. And yes, you might face judgment or criticism, but those voices, they'll be drowned out by stronger, deeper connections that you'll build with people who truly get you. Look, this isn't one of those just be fearless talks. It's about being courageous and selfless. It's to be courageous and selfless, to show up fully, even when it's uncomfortable, because that's where real connection happens. So let me ask you this. What are your flaws or cracks that you've been trying to hide? The parts of yourself that you've been sanding down to fit in? What if those are the very things that could make you unforgettable? So, my invitation for you is this. Next time you feel the urge to hold back, the urge to edit so you can fit into a box that doesn't feel like yours, pause. Think about Kintsugi. Think about my client Barbara. Think about Van Gogh. Think about how much beauty, connection, and success comes from showing up fully with your flaws and everything, your quirks, your edges, your humor, your humanity. Those are your gold. And when you let them shine, you give others permission to do the same thing. So stop hiding. Stop sanding down your edges. The world doesn't need more polished, fake to perfection personas. It needs more connection. It needs more depth, more truth. And most of all, it needs you.